Is the bill be now read a third time? I call the member for Shortland.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Labor will be supporting the third reading of this bill because it goes to the integrity of sport. But there are some very important features that we need to discuss. Australia has a long and proud history as a sporting nation, from backyard games to the Boxing Day Test, from grassroots participation to competition on the national and international stage. Sport has and continues to play an important role in our way of life and our national identity. Whenever we hear good news stories about sport at any level, these stories enhance the reputation of Australian sport and our love for it. But when we hear reports of doping in sport, when we hear reports of match fixing, those reports damage and devalue Australia's sports reputation and our relationship with it. Labor in government was proactive in deploying measures to protect against these and other threats to the integrity of sport in Australia. We recognise the need to evaluate the effectiveness of Australia's sports integrity measures and upgrade and update those measures when needed to address changing environments and new threats. In 2012, the Labor federal government established the National Integrity of Sport Unit. In 2013, we passed legislation to strengthen the Australian Sports Anti-Doping Authority's power. But threats to the integrity of Australian sport continue to evolve, and so must our protective measures. And, Mr Speaker, you only have to look at the rise of online gaming, the ability of sports like cricket to bet on the outcome of individual balls, to know that we need enhanced protection measures for the integrity of sport. The Australian public must have trust in our sporting competitions and our institutions, otherwise we'll lose a key feature of Australian life. In response to these ever-evolving risks, the government announced the review of Australia's sports integrity arrangements in August 2017. The panel that conducted the review was chaired by Justice James Wood, and the review is known to be known as the Wood Review. The government received the Wood Review report in March 2018 and released its response to the review in February of this year. It is a detailed and extensive review, nearly 300 pages containing 52 recommendations. One of those recommendations was the establishment of a National Sports Integrity Commission to cohesively draw together and develop existing sports integrity capabilities, knowledge and expertise, and to nationally coordinate all elements of the sports integrity threat response, including prevention, monitoring and detection, investigation and enforcement. The Australian Sports Anti-Doping Authority Amendment Sports Integrity Australia Bill 2019 seeks to implement the government's response to that recommendation. This bill would establish a new Australian government agency to be known as Sport Integrity Australia, designed to protect the integrity of Australian sport. It is proposed that this new agency would bring together a range of sports integrity functions that are currently the responsibility of the Australian Sports Anti-Doping Authority, ASADA, the National Sports Integrity Unit and Sports Australia. To paraphrase from the review, a centrally coordinated response to sports integrity issues will help overcome the silo effect that currently exists with multiple bodies, including NSOs, law enforcement and regulatory agencies engaged in protecting sports from threats. The review also noted that difficulties in securing a coordinated response are compounded by our federated system, in which there are often differences in state, territory and federal regulatory and criminal laws. Protecting Australia's sports integrity is a goal that has bipartisan support. Labor intends to continue the bipartisan approach by supporting the establishment of Sport Integrity Australia through these bills. Labor has engaged with stakeholders across the sports sector and taken into account their views on the reforms that will be implemented by this bill and the associated Australian Sports Anti-Doping Authority Amendment Enhancing Australia's Anti-Doping Capability Bill 2019. While the majority of the feedback has been supportive, some stakeholders have raised specific concerns regarding certain specific aspects of this bill and the Enhancing Australian Anti-Doping Capability Bill. In relation to this bill, Scrutiny Committee is seeking advice from the Minister for Sport as to why it's considered appropriate to provide members of the Sport Integrity Australia Advisory Council with civil immunity so that affected persons have their right to bring in an action to enforce their legal rights limited to situations where lack of good faith is shown. Scrutiny Committee has also asked for more detailed advice as to why it's considered necessary and appropriate for Sports Integrity Australia to be an enforcement body for the purposes of the Privacy Act 1988. Specifically, the committee has noted that considerations of this aspect of the bill would be helped by further explanation of how Sports Integrity Australia enforcement-related activities will be undertaken in practice, including the nature of the enforcement powers and who will be exercising the enforcement powers. These Scrutiny Committee concerns largely mirror the issues that some stakeholders have raised with Labor. Broadly speaking, those concerns are related to appropriate checks and balances and ensuring that in bolstering Australia's defences against sports integrity threats, the rights of individuals are not appropriately eroded. In recognition of these concerns, the Senate has referred the bill to the Senate Standing Committee for Community Affairs for short inquiry to report on 3 February next year. Labor hopes that this process will enable stakeholders that still have concerns to outline those issues and allow them to be appropriately considered before this bill is passed in its final form. And the Australian Sports Anti-Doping Authority Amendment enhancing Australia's anti-doping capability bill that has just passed this House has been referred for an inquiry with the same time frame, given its deep connection with this bill. Given the great value of sport to Australians, our society and economy, protecting the integrity of Australian sport is something that Labor supports. Madam Deputy Speaker, integrity in all things, I think, is essential. And what we've witnessed today is a complete lack of integrity by the government, a government that is intent on silencing opposition to any attempt to question their behaviour, to question their performance. We've seen a lack of integrity by the Minister for Emissions Reduction and Energy in his use of fraudulent documents to try and smear the Lord Mayor of Sydney. We've seen the Prime Minister and a retinue of ministers misleading Parliament, again going to the lack of integrity by this government. This is a government that's only 6 months into its third term, but lacks completely an agenda and is pursuing that lack of agenda without any integrity. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, while it's very important to have integrity in sports, we should also have it in politics. And that's why a commitment to a truly genuine National Integrity Commission, one with true powers, is essential, and that's Labor's policy as well, something, again, that the government professed to support but backtracked on it when they won government again. Integrity matters, Madam Deputy Speaker. Integrity matters. The Minister for Emissions Reduction and Energy is a classic case of someone who lacks integrity. This is a man who misled Parliament in his first speech. And while I'll criticise him for many things, I can't criticise him for a lack of consistency. He has been consistent in his contempt for Parliament, his lack of integrity, start as he means to continue, his contempt for Parliament, his ability to mislead Parliament.
The member for Shortland will resume his seat. I call the member for Ford on a point of order.
I appreciate the member for what the member for Shortland is trying to do, but the point of order is, Madam Deputy Speaker, to bring him back to the substance of the bill and to cease reflecting on.
Seat. I'm sorry, I was speaking with the clerk at the time. I would just remind the member for Shortland to be relevant to the question before the House, and the member for Shortland has the call.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, for your wise ruling. Integrity in sport is vital. That is why this bill is vital, and that's why Labor supports it. As I said before, the integrity of sport is being challenged in many arenas. The ability to bet on individual balls delivered in cricket matches is a classic example. The ability to bet in the middle of a sporting game, full stop, is of great concern. The doping allegations that were levelled against the Essendon Football Club and the Manly Sea Eagles were another example of the integrity of sport being under attack. The Sharks are a classic case where they rorted the salary cap and were caught finally, but there are severe questions about their 2015 grand final. Their only grand final has been completely tainted because of the lack of integrity and their intent on rorting the salary cap. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, this bill is very essential. That's why Labor supports it. That's why Labor is working constructively to advance this bill. That's why the Senate committees will report so quickly on this issue. I only wish, Madam Deputy Speaker, that integrity was shown in all aspects of government. Sadly, we haven't seen that today, but I applaud the government for moving on sport. This is a culmination of the Woods Review, and the Woods Review was a seminal act in sports administration, and that's why Labor supports the implementation of this legislation, and I commend the bill to the House.